Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour à tous. Thank you for joining us. Merci d'être parmi nous aujourd'hui.
Thank you for being with us.
Your moderator. Je m'appelle Kina Leclerc et je serai l'animatrice de ce point de presse. Before we begin, a quick reminder to place your phone on mute until I invite you to speak or to ask your question. And please do not place the call on hold. Available for questions from the media, we have, disponible pour répondre aux questions des médias, nous accueillons in Council Chambers, Mayor Le Maire Jim Watson, Steve Kanellakos, City Manager, Directeur Municipal, and Anthony DiMonte, General Manager of Emergency and Protective Services, Directeur Général des Services de Protection et d'Urgence. And phoning in today, we have la Dr. Vera Etches, Medical Officer of Health, médecin-chef en santé publique. I will now invite each agency to ask their question. You may ask one question with one follow-up. Par ordre alphabétique, j'invite maintenant chaque organisme à poser une question et une question.
So I will ask everyone to ask one question and one follow-up question.
Ottawa, who do we have on the line?
Hi, Kina. It's Kate.
Hi, Kate.
My first question is to both Mayor Watson and Dr. Etches. I wonder, you had a call with Minister Lecce yesterday. What did you tell him and what did you hear?
Thank you, Kate, and Happy New Year. It was a call with the Minister, his officials, as well as Dr. Etches and Keith Eglai, the Chair of Ottawa Public Health. And we laid out our case for opening schools in the Ottawa area. Our numbers generally are going in the right direction. Dr. Etches has been very public about her desire to see kids back in classrooms, as have I, because obviously it has an impact on family life and mental health and well-being. And it was a very cordial conversation, and the Minister appreciated our input, and we look forward to hearing at some point when that date is going to take place where kids can get back in the classroom for the benefit of the students, the teachers, the parents, and all of our society. Thank you.
Yes, it's Vera. I definitely conveyed why I feel confident, what the evidence is behind my, desire to see schools open, to minimize the harms to students, and to build that, again, that understanding, not with the Minister. I think he understands, actually, of what is keeping COVID levels low when schools are open. Within schools, we just don't see evidence of a lot of transmission. I found the Minister absolutely is interested in that balance in promoting the health of children and youth, and understood very well that need to have the schools open as much as possible. So, and that this is a partnership that with the Ministry of Education providing the guidance and the requirements for these measures, like school screening. They're strengthening the active screening requirement. Means teachers are going to have to give some evidence that they've used the screening tool every day. They're strengthening the mask use. So. We talked about other things that we could add in that aren't a requirement for school opening, but the idea of using the tools we have, the rapid tests that are becoming available, to be able to look further into, is there undetected transmission happening in schools, and be able to explore that. So I think I also am hopeful that we'll hear updates from the ministry, soon.
Thank you. And my other question is for you, Mayor Watson. Yesterday, the Joint Committees decided to allow Taywin 445 hectares within the urban boundary, even though staff had scored the parcel low for not being close to existing services or transit. I wondered, it heads to council in a couple of weeks. Are you behind that move? Do you support those big changes?
Thank you, Kate. Yes, I do. I think the Planning Committee and Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee did a very good job, as did our staff. There's often differences of opinion between the staff and elected officials. That's part of the democratic process. But I think if we're serious about reconciliation, we have to take our words, which we talk about land recognitions and so on, and put those words into action. And one of the ways we can do that is to allow the First Nations to develop a community by their people, to create some economic opportunity for individuals from First Nations. And I think it's a very innovative, pioneering way for a city to actually go beyond the traditional land claim statements that we make at beginnings of council meetings and put those actions or those words into action for the betterment of First Nations and the betterment of reconciliation. There's always going to be a debate. There's lots of people, you know, I know a number of the development companies are not happy, but the reality is I think this is a very good proposal, very solid, and we will have linkages to transit because there are lots of areas that are not right next to the transit stations. There'll be community buses that will feed into the East End transit stations, and I very much look forward to that project progressing in the years ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Moving on, we will go to Eric O'Brien at City News. Eric, are you on the line? Are you on mute, Eric? Okay. We will move on to CTV Ottawa. Do we have Ted or Josh on the line?
Ted Raymond is here. Thank you. My first question will be to Dr. Etches. Just want to double back on the schools issue. I'm wondering if you can maybe elaborate on what you expect to see different when kids go back to school once the ministry allows that to happen.
Sure, and I think I will actually start with what would be the same because that's encouraging. They are the tools that work to keep COVID transmission under control in the fall. So the layers of protection that will be present in schools start with making sure COVID doesn't enter the schools by using the screening tool. It's available on Ottawa Public Health's website to make sure that if people have respiratory symptoms, they go for testing. The tests are available without a wait list. You book an online appointment, you can have a same-day appointment, so that's good. And then the masks is new for children in grade 1 to 2. That will now be required, whereas previously it was required for children in grade 3 and older. However, it's not a dramatic change in many schools that had already been recommending that students wear masks as much as they could in those younger ages. But this will be a requirement now. So that, Ottawa Public Health and the school boards are looking at how to support families who might need access to masks. That will be there. The other measure we know that continues to work is the same, is maximizing the distance between students and using the cohort. That when students are in a class, that's their cohort. They don't mix with other cohorts. And so if someone tests positive, then the school health nurse works with the teachers, with a principal to identify who are the high-risk contacts in that cohort, who needs to stay home for 14 days. So we will see that. Some people in a cohort will have to go home. But that really has been an effective measure where we haven't seen much transmission really beyond cohorts in most of the situations. What else will be new is this idea of exploring rapid tests. What else will be new is this idea to take a look at whether there are more asymptomatic transmission happening than we have detected previously. I think that's an additional measure that we'll look at and see what can be added. And I think the focus of our school health team is working with the school boards to make sure that all of these infection prevention control measures are reinforced. People remember them. There's an update. The teachers, are supported. We certainly know that we've learned through the fall. I think people got better and better and could refine their practices. We've learned how important it is during lunch times to make sure that there isn't mixing between cohorts or teachers without masks on. So these are the things that have worked so far.
Okay, thank you. And this is not my follow-up, but I'm just wondering if you could just repeat the beginning part of your info about the rapid tests. There was some interference in the call.
Yes. So the Ottawa Public Health is, again, working with school boards and our local testing partners to explore the use of rapid tests in, a small setting, small scale to begin with, and see what that can add to our understanding of what is happening in schools.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you very much. My follow-up question, I guess, is also for you, Dr. Etches, but perhaps Mr. DeMonte and Mayor Watson could weigh in. It's about Mooney's Bay, just following Councillor Brockington's notice of motion. Do you believe that the Toboggan Hill is a COVID-19 risk?
I really haven't been out there. I haven't seen what's happening on the hills. I think that bylaw might be better able to answer this question. My advice is for people to avoid crowded areas, and whenever you come into close contact with someone, even outdoors, that can pose a risk for COVID transmission.
So I can perhaps add a bit more information. So there's two issues with Mooney's Bay, that hill in particular. There's some safety concerns that had been identified in an audit several years ago, and that's part of the direction staff got today to go back and review that and see what needs to be done to make that hill safe. And yes, unfortunately, the first few weeks, as Dr. Etches indicated, her direction was not being followed. There were several hundred people on the site, and it becomes a very difficult situation for bylaw officers to try to enforce that kind of circumstance. So the decision was made to, both for the safety reasons and to assure public health, that the site would be closed.
Thank you very much. We will now go to Craig Lord at Global Ottawa.
Thanks very much. This is probably a question for Mayor Watson. Just wondering if I could get maybe your reaction to the past weekend's big box splits. We saw more than 24 violations flagged, or orders and tickets handed out. Were you surprised to see that many violations? I know Councillor Harder was a bit incredulous about people not following the rules there, but what was your reaction to seeing all those fines for the weekend?
No, I wasn't surprised, because I've gone by these big box stores. I haven't been inside them since the pandemic started, but I certainly have heard from residents and citizens of Ottawa that they tend to be attracting hundreds, if not thousands, of people inside the store. And that's a great concern to me, not only from a public health point of view, but also from a fairness point of view, as to why they can go and sell flat screen TVs and golf clubs and clothing, yet small businesses in Ottawa are not able to do that. So it really is a question of equity. I think there probably would have been more charges had the province not given advance notice that they were coming. I wasn't quite sure about that strategy, but I think there were close to 24 tickets issued, and our folks issued some as well. And my hope is that these big stores that make lots of money from residents of Ottawa start being better corporate citizens. You saw the motion that was passed unanimously today by Council calling on the province to either allow the same 25% rule in small businesses as they do for large big box stores, or if that's not going to be possible, then follow the Quebec and Manitoba examples where those non-essential items, are not available, but groceries and essential medical items are available. Thank you.
A quick follow-up there. I know Premier Ford has spoken out very publicly against or in favor of really regulating those big box stores. Have you had any conversations with him or anyone at the province that gives you any confidence that there might be legislation coming to crack down on big box stores, or what's your confidence level around that?
Well, what I wanted to do was to get Council's support, and I appreciate Councillor Kavanagh bringing the motion forward that I second it. And I'll be writing to the Premier later today or early tomorrow to ensure he knows what our view is with respect to leveling the playing field for these small businesses that are really struggling. And we'll send that to local MPPs as well, so they understand that this is a serious issue. And if we can't have a level playing field, then these small businesses are going to hurt even more than they have been. People can still go and curbside pick up at stores, including the big box stores. There's no need for them to go in and go down every aisle of clothes, electronic products and so on. in a Walmart or a Costco. And so I would hope that the province moves on that relatively quickly, because it is really hurting these small businesses that see the lineups of people going into a Costco and a Walmart and absolutely no one able to go into the small stores on Main Street or Bank Street or Montreal Road or St. Joseph Boulevard. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I believe we have City News back on the line. Eric, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Now, I don't know exactly who can answer my question, but now that the council has unanimously agreed to move forward with the Byward Market revitalization project, what's the next step in this plan?
Well, the next step is to start to discuss with the private sector and the federal and provincial governments what kind of support we can expect from them, because, as you know, this is a very large undertaking. But it's not a ward project. It's really a city-wide project. And as I pointed out in our State of the City address, in 2027, the Byward Market turns 200. And we want to make sure that it's in its best shape possible. And we revitalize the farmers market and make it more pedestrian friendly and ensure that it's something that is going to act as a real draw, not just for residents of Ottawa, but for visitors from around the world, because it's the oldest continuous farmers market in North America. So, you know, we will do, for instance, excuse me, we put close to $1 million into the project to renovate and upgrade the Byward Market building, which is really the first step of many. And of course, with the LRT, excuse me just for a moment, with the LRT literally at the front doorstep of the Byward Market, it's going to make it easier for people in the West End, the East End, and the South End to come down to the Byward Market by not having to find the elusive parking spot, but hop on the train and hop off the train, and you're right there in the heart of the Byward Market. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Watson. Actually, a follow-up to that, actually. You mentioned that by 2027 it turns 200. Is that the hopes that the city is going to finish it by 2027, and at the same time you're asking for provincial and federal funding? How much of the cost could be covered by the upper levels of government?
Well, that will be part of our negotiations. At this point, I think it's better to get their buy-in to the concept and then start talking about specific projects, because everything will not be done overnight. You know, we're not going to tear down the parking garage, and we're not going to start taking up all the parking spots overnight. It have to be done gradually in consultation with the businesses and the BIA and our city's economic development staff. But, you know, we want to see a significant number of the proposed changes in place for the 200th anniversary. That's 6 years away, so it gives us a lot of lead time. But, you know, 6 years goes by quickly, as we found with the 2017 celebrations. We started 5 years out. I think the city did the best job of any municipality in all of Canada in terms of our numbers of people and sheer number of events that were very exciting. And we want to bring that life back to the farmers market and to the Byward Market. And it's one of the reasons why we've adopted this Farmer First project. If you're a new farmer to the Byward or Parkdale Market, there won't be a rental fee for you. And we'll also incentivize those people who don't just resell products that come from Montreal or Niagara, but actually grow the products within the Ottawa area. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for coming back to me.
No problem. Nous allons maintenant passer à Julien.
Now let's give the floor to Julien Paquet de Le Droit. Thank you very much. The question will be for Dr. Etches. I don't know if you knew about the motion that was adopted for the big box stores. Do you agree with this request, the request that will be made at the provincial level to allow the opening of the small businesses in Ottawa? I understand the issue of fairness in the motion. I understand also the issues from small companies, small businesses. We understand that they have to be open to receive their clients. So we have to have a good balance. I would say that the number of cases were too high before. It's a decision that was made at the provincial level. They are the ones that would decide about the lockdowns. And they have to decide if the number of cases are low enough to allow the reopening of small businesses in Ottawa. We understand the difficulties, and we need to have more clarity from the province. Thank you very much. Mayor Watson, can you give me more details about the 200 years celebration for the Byward Market? We talked about receiving La Machine again downtown. Did you start the talks about it? It's only an idea that was submitted. Yes, my office discussed with the group responsible for La Machine. The discussions were very positive. La Machine was very successful when we celebrated 2017. We had a large crowd in the Byward Market in downtown Ottawa. So certainly this is my dream, my objective, to convince La Machine to come back in Ottawa to celebrate this 200 years of the Byward Market. We will also discuss this with Ottawa Tourism. It will be wonderful to have their support. I think it's very realistic for the City of Ottawa to have them and for the Byward Market. Thank you very much.
Going to John Willing at the Ottawa Citizen.
Thanks, Kina. Question for Mayor Watson is jumping off the question asked by Kate. And I'm wondering, doesn't including the Algonquins of Ontario's land undermine the advice of your professional planners and go against smart urban planning to rein in far-flung development? And how does a council weigh Indigenous reconciliation with good municipal land use planning?
I think, my view is that you can't have reconciliation without sharing the wealth and not just the crumbs. I think this is a project where the Algonquins have purchased this land. They have plans that they'd like to create a community and like to give First Nations, for once, an opportunity to be self-sufficient and create some economic development and jobs in the city's near East End. There's always going to be those conflicts and pushes and pulls, and we heard some of that obviously by some members of council and certain members of the development industry that were not happy. But I think, as I said earlier, John, we're always very good at, reading the statement of our respect for First Nations. But this will really be the first time the City of Ottawa has done anything of a very substantive and tangible fashion that will allow our First Nations brothers and sisters an opportunity to create some economic growth and opportunity for their people through employment and through investment, and determining what's going to be in and what's going to be out of the urban core is not always an exact science. I know we have a point and a rating system, but I think at times you have to be flexible to recognize that when a proposal like this comes forward, and it's a first of its kind, that we should take it seriously and look at its merits. And you saw the Joint Committee of Agriculture and Rural Affairs and Planning overwhelmingly supported the proposal. And as you know, the Algonquins are not getting everything that they want within their land, but I think it's a reasonable compromise that will help benefit First Nations in the National Capital Region. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Just shifting gears to the Byward Market, we've heard so often in reports from consultants too that the key to the Byward Market's future is the availability of fresh food, that fresh food aspect. And as you observed today, there are farmers markets all over the city now. So much more competition. And I don't know if this is even possible, but should the city somehow limit the number of farmers markets so that the future of the Byward Market isn't ultimately doomed?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think really, the genie's out of the bottle. It'd be very difficult to go to Westboro and say, by the way, we're shutting down your farmers market. It's very popular, as is the one at Lansdowne and the one out in Cumberland Village. And as I mentioned, there's probably close to 20 plus farmers markets. I think what we have to do is help those new farmers, local farmers who have never tried to come down to the market for a variety of reasons, to give them a fighting chance by waiving their rent. And that's one way of doing it. Excuse me. And I think, last year was obviously a very bad year because of COVID, and you'd go down the main street where all of the vendors are supposed to be, and you'd be lucky if there were 4 or 5 vendors. It really looked quite sad. So we have to really rejuvenate the agricultural side of the market, because that is really the essence of why we have the Byward Market. It was a marketplace. It was not just meant to have retail and licensed establishments and so on. So I don't think going back and trying to reverse the hands of time and close down markets would go over very well. I don't think that's realistic. But, I think with the advent of LRT coming right to the front doorstep, it's going to allow people who live, in my neighborhood in the West End or others in the East End or people in the South End to hop on the train and be downtown literally in, 10, 12 minutes and do some of their fresh produce shopping and maybe stay for lunch or dinner and then head back. So that's going to open a world of opportunities to get more customers into the downtown core, particularly the Byward Market. And my hope is that we're going to be, with our Farmers First policy, able to attract some farmers who have never been to the market. Maybe they felt, they'd heard business wasn't as good or there were parking issues, and put those aside and come and sell some of their great wares. Because I know I go to a lot of farmers markets, Metcalfe, North Gore, Carp is huge. We've got a lot more people living in the downtown because of all of the projects for apartments and condos and infill. And it's, I think, perfect for us to start focusing on improving that particular important, beautiful piece of land as we head towards the bicentennial of the market in 2027. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Kiva.
Thank you, John. We will now be going to Kelly Egan at the Ottawa Sun. Do we have Kelly on the line, or Christina Spencer?
Hi.
Go ahead, Kelly. We can't hear you, Kelly. You might be on mute. OK, we'll move on to, on va passer à Frédéric Pépin à Radio-Canada.
Frédéric Pépin from Ottawa, Radio-Canada. Hello. My question is for Mayor Watson. This morning, you had your state speech this morning. You talk about Prince of Wales and the change of name. Is it already done? Would it be possible? Is it already done that we can be used the way for the bicycles? So what will be the next step before we rename it Commando Way? We're in discussion with the Canadian government and also with the Ontario government for funding. We're talking here about $11 to $13 million to improve the bridge between the two cities. The promoter of this project is the Honorable McKenna. She's the deputy for Ottawa Centre. So my office is discussing with the province and the Government of Canada to confirm the funding for this project. We had different budgets for different projects, and we have to receive their approval to consolidate the funds for the bridge. So right now, We will be concluding these negotiations within the next few weeks. We will be able to start building this year, and we hope it's going to be concluded by the end of this year at the beginning of 2022. We already had the plans. We have already engineers and architects working on it, and we're ready to launch an RPO for the building and renovation of this bridge that is very important between the two cities and the national capital. Follow-up questions for Dr. Etches? You mentioned it in English. Can you repeat in French? Can you give us an idea of the arguments submitted to the Minister of Education in the call that you had earlier this week to promote the reopening of the schools? The Minister of Education understands the local situation. I shared the data that we have and saying that I'm confident that we can reopen the schools in Ottawa. We talked about the different levels of COVID cases that we have in Ottawa. We also explained how we managed the situation in October and that we were able to reduce the number of active cases in Ottawa. So we have a system that works well. We have a good screening system at the beginning of the day. We also separating the different cohorts. And it was clear that the minister is interested and is concerned about the well-being of our children. So we also have the option of having the new quick test. We could use it not for every single schools, but we want to see if we have a higher level of transmission in some areas. But this was not something that was important for the reopening of our school. It was just a complementary information. Thank you very much for your answer. Thank you.
Nous allons maintenant passer à Kenza Beladi à TV.
Now we give the floor to Kenza Beladi of TVA Ottawa. No? We hear you well. Go ahead. I have a question for Mayor Watson. You talked about the resident in Central Park in the east of Ottawa. They want to change the name of Trump Avenue because they want to dissociate this avenue with former President Trump. Personally, I'm happy not to live on Trump Avenue. If half of the residents wants to change the name, then Raleigh-Brockington will assume the cost of the change to change the Trump Avenue name. This is the residents' decision. If they live on this street, it's time to turn the page with the departure of Trump. Thank you very much. That's all that I had. Thank you very much, Kenza.
Kelly Egan is back on the line. Okay, so this is all the time that we have. C'est tout le temps que nous disposons aujourd'hui. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Bonne journée.
Have a nice day.
A nice pot of rice brought to the table, or you can do what I'm going to do in a minute, just use some